let's see, what should I start with today? Should I start with Kohberger? Yeah, maybe we'll start with Kohberger and then we'll go over to the Petito v. Laundry v. Bertolino stuff. I'm sorry, guys. There's a lot of trial stuff that's happening. Okay, we're getting it all mixed up and everything. But anyways, Kohberger's is accused of the murders of 4 students, and they found something pretty big at the crime scene. They found the knife sheath that was on 2 of the victims, nearby to 2 of the victims' bodies. And, you know, people are wondering if Kohberger was doing it because maybe he did it on purpose, because he kind of just want to, you know, play around with maybe the cops or something like that. Maybe he was really cocky that he wasn't going to get caught. Or, you know, like I was thinking, like, you know, even though you may have all this planned out, but when you're in the moment, it's very different than actually having it planned out in your head. When you're in the moment, there's probably a lot of adrenaline going on, nervousness, whatever the fuck it is that he's experienced. I don't know. I'm not a fucking serial killer, but it's possible that he just forgot it there, like an idiot. You know, maybe he thought he could not smell the law enforcement agents. But yeah, he's going to be on trial soon for the alleged murders of the 4 students. And we have this knife sheath here, and on the button of the knife sheath, they found a DNA. And so there is now this court document. It's a motion for protective order. And essentially what they want to do is they want to protect they did like this whole, there was like a whole behind the scenes of how they were able to link Kohberger's DNA to the DNA in the knife sheath. And maybe I'll just read it to you guys. I'm so shitty at like summarizing all this. Yeah, I read that today. They swabbed his mouth. Scary. Hey, everyone. Hey, Paul. How are you doing today? So let's just read the court document, because it's going to do a better job at summarizing it than I am right now. And also I'm really sweaty because it's hot here and I don't know why the AC's not running. All right, guys. Oh, but you know what? Remind me though, because Court TV this morning, they released a video where they actually showed the kabar knife. And that's the knife that they believe that was used on the victims. And this knife is scary. I mean, all knives are scary, but this is a pretty big, heavy, chunky looking knife. And it looks scary. Apparently, though, even though it's they kind of labeled it as like an army knife, you could get it on Amazon. I haven't looked on Amazon yet, but Hi, Nacho. How are you doing today? Nightwolf thinks he didn't forget about the knife. He was trying to throw off the police investigation. It didn't work, though. I don't know. I think he just forgot, man. I think this guy was trying to be so careful with everything, wearing gloves and stuff like that, handling his trash, and then he forgot the knife sheath at the scene. I don't know, or he may have done it, you know, to like try to taunt the police, but I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. Hello, Glorin Dellin. How's it going? How are you doing today? Oh, you got German Sheppies? Oh, I love German Sheppies. They're so cute. Is it like a Rambo's knife? Rambo, dude. I haven't seen Rambo in so long, so I don't remember. But funny thing is, my sister, when she was a kid, she used to be scared of Rambo. So what I would do, just like tease her, it was really mean though. I would run up to our TV stand, grab the VHS of Rambo and like shove it in her face. And she would start crying. Oh God. Thank God she doesn't watch my YouTube streams. She watches my Twitch streams though. But I used to be like, Rambo. And she would like start crying and stuff. So yeah. I was mean. Hello there. Hi, Sam. How are you doing today? How's it going? Hello, hello. Why don't they handcuff him right away? I mean, he's currently in custody. Best wishes to the doggies. Hope they're better soon. Oh, it's okay. We like the people who are on delay. It's all good. I did hear about that. Alex Murdaugh is being deposed in the civil case for Paul's boat crash. I did hear about that. I didn't look into it yet, though, but I saw the thumbnail on YouTube. DMing your sister in Discord. I mean, she knows, she knows what happened between us, when we were kids. But anyways, it's the parents' fault, okay? The parents are supposed to be there to be the referee between the kids, okay? My parents just let the kids have free reign of like whatever the fuck we wanted to do. So it's not my fault, okay? I was a piece of shit kid because my parents didn't put me in my place. The knife is very big. They're showing a similar one. Oh, on Court TV. Yeah, I want to show it to you guys because it's scary. I don't know. It's a pretty scary one. And then also the knife sheath, since the knife is huge, of course, the knife sheath is going to be big as well. I don't know how he forgot it, but it's a huge thing to leave behind. Anyways, comes now the state of Idaho by and through the Latah County prosecuting attorney and respectfully moves the court for a protective order pursuant to for information related to the investigative genetic genealogy. Is that redundant to say that? Genealogy. Genetic genealogy. Genealogy is a... Doesn't it just sound redundant? Genealogy, a line of descent traced continuously from an ancestor. Genetic genealogy. I don't know. That to me just sounds redundant. Maybe it's just me. Oh, they're in a book club. What book are they reading? This case arises from a quadruple homicide. Law enforcement found the DNA of a potential suspect at a crime scene, and the FBI submitted to the DNA to one or more publicly available genetic genealogy services to determine potential relatives of the suspect. The FBI then used common genealogical techniques to develop a family tree leading to the defendant. The state seeks to protect from the disclosure of the names and the public information of hundreds of innocent relatives on the family tree. So I'm assuming this is going to be the Kohberger family tree. The names of the publicly available genetic genealogy services use, and certain motion for protective order. So whatever method they use to link Kohberger to the DNA that was found on the buckle of the knife sheaths, I guess that's something that they don't really want it to be available. But not just available in general, like for us, but it seems like available for the defense. So that's kind of interesting. What did I want to mention? Hold on. I did want to bring something up. Yeah, Taurus, the knife is like a Rambo knife because it's like from the military thing. The knife is big. They were showing one. You're going to have nightmare. Well, just don't get sleep paralysis. Although sometimes I feel like I talk about sleep paralysis all the time that it might, you guys might be thinking about it so much that I might end up getting you sleep paralysis. And if I do, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. I was wondering why the font for this was kind of funky. Sorry, I didn't mean to read that part. And certain other information described below. So again, they were able to find the DNA on the knife sheath. I hate that word, sheath. Knife sheath buckle, right? Now, the reason why they were able to get the DNA that was linked to Kohberger was because they went to Kohberger's family's house halfway across the U.S. was in Pennsylvania, I think. And they went through the trash. And in the trash, they were to find Kohberger's dad's DNA, and that's how they believe that whatever DNA they have currently in their possession is someone that is related to the dad. And I think they were able to say that it would be the dad was like the paternal it was like a paternal DNA. The fact that his DNA was on the knife holder snap, he went upstairs first. It would have the other's DNA if he did the kids on the second floor first transfer. On the holder snap, if it had others' DNA, what do you mean by that? I Googled the etymology of genealogy. It comes from the root word meaning generation. Oh, okay. I don't know. It just sounds redundant to me, but thank you. I appreciate that. Disclosure of this information is not required by Rule 16 of the Idaho Criminal Rules and should be protected from disclosure of the good cause described below, including the state's privilege to protect the identities of informers as described in Idaho Rule of Evidence 509. So here's the factual background. I should have just read the factual background because sometimes when I summarize these cases, because there's a lot of information, I mess it up. So I should just read the factual background. We're doing it right now. On November 13, 2022, law enforcement found the bodies of Madison Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, Zaina Cornoodle, and Ethan, I think it's pronounced Chapin. I've been pronouncing it Chapin, but I've seen other news reporters say Chapin. So I'll go with Chapin unless it's a different pronunciation. Let me know. At 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. All 4 victims died from apparent knife wounds. Law enforcement found a kabar knife sheath on the bed next to the bodies. Oh, you know what? I know why. I'm sorry. A little bit of a digression. I know why I'm mixing up Idaho and Utah because a lot of things are happening in Utah right now. So I'm getting it all mixed up. Utah is Shabusiness, right? Utah is Shabusiness. And another one. Who else is Utah right now? Yeah, that's why I'm getting it all mixed up. Okay, sorry. The sheath was face down and partially under both Madison's body and the comforter on the bed. Law enforcement seized the K-bar knife sheath pursuant to a search warrant. I'm also kind of curious how come the sheath was not, I don't know, I'm assuming the sheath might have like something where you can kind of like clip it onto your belt, your pants or something like that. Like why was he just carrying it around and not like having it buckled onto him? But whatever. The Idaho State Police Lab in Meridian, Idaho located DNA. Oh, Corey Richens. Thank you. Oh, thank you guys. You guys are my reminders. Thank you. Located DNA. The Idaho State Police Lab in Meridian, Idaho located DNA on the K-bar knife sheath. The ISP laboratory determined the DNA came from a single source and that source was male. Once law enforcement had a single source DNA from the K-bar knife sheath, they conducted what is called a short tandem repeat STR analysis. The STR DNA analysis involves looking at 20 regions within human DNA that allows law enforcement to make a direct comparison between the two STR DNA profiles. Law enforcement submitted the STR DNA profile obtained from the kabar knife sheet to the Combined DNA Index System, CODIS, a database of STR DNA profiles with convicted offenders, arrestees, crime scene evidence to identify the source of DNA. No match was found. So again, it seems like, I mean, I don't think we had any like previous criminal records of Kohberger. So he wasn't even in the system. Let me go to court. Is this the one right here? Oh no, not this one. So this is where, she brings out, this right here. Just so you guys can see how big it is.
More about this, and I have a prop, and I can't underscore enough just how heavy this is. I have a kabar knife here. This is the type of weapon that was used to kill those 4 beautiful college. And
I guess that's the buckle right there.
Students. This is the sheath, and it was on this.
Yeah, see right there. I don't know. I don't understand why didn't he just strap this on his belt? Okay, whatever. I don't know. Okay.
Snap of the sheath. This snap right here that was swabbed, and that's where that little bit of a DNA profile began. So that's where it all started. Now, investigators didn't know whose DNA it was on the snap. They just were able to get somebody's DNA here. And as they continued investigating, they honed in on Brian Kohberger. That is why investigators started going through.
And then she takes it out. So you guys can see
this. This is so heavy. I mean, look at this. Look how large this is. This turns my stomach. And this isn't the first time I've held this. I've held this previously in our newsroom. It's very heavy. The handle's very heavy. When you think about this being the murder weapon used, it turns your stomach. The sheer brutality of these homicides, each of those young people being stabbed multiple times.
God, and you know, like the autopsy photos are going to be crazy for the jurors to view because it's not just one autopsy photo of one victim. It's going to be 4 different victims. That's a lot for the jury to process. Oh, hey, Akira, how are you doing today? Corey Rich, is that the one that killed Dad before Father's Day? I believe it was done in March and Father's Day is in June, right? Yeah, it happened last week. Yeah, I believe the murder happened in, the alleged murder happened in March. But she's the one that is the children's book author, wrote a book about dealing with grief for her kids. And then, about like a year after, she was arrested because they think she did it. So pretty wild one as well. Unable to find a match using STR-DNA analysis, law enforcement decided to use investigative genetic genealogy to find a lead. Genetic genealogy allows individuals to trace their lineage or connect with unknown family members using DNA. Have you guys done this yet? They have services where it's like you do the DNA thing, right? I think you do like a buccal swab of your mouth, then you submit it, and then they find out like who your like family tree, your relatives are, and stuff like that. Have you guys ever done that? I always thought it was interesting, but I feel like they wouldn't have any information. I don't know. My family, they're all like in Asia and stuff. Oh, your sister did? Did she find anything interesting on that? Yeah, I remember it was weeks after Valentine's Day because they think that she may have potentially have tried to poison him with fentanyl on Valentine's Day. And it was weeks after that they were celebrating closing on the home when really they weren't and the home wasn't closed yet. But yeah, I think March 6th sounds about right. Typically involves sending a DNA sample using a tube of saliva to a genetic genealogy service like, Ancestry.com or 23andMe. The genetic genealogy service then creates a single nucleotide polymorphism SNP profile to use for genealogic purposes. A SNP profile is different than using the SCR DNA profile and it is used more often for genealogic purposes. Ooh, we're gonna have a lot of words that we're gonna be slipping on. The genetic genealogy service then uses an algorithm to compare the user's SNP profile to the SNP profile submitted to the genealogy. Can we just say GGS, genetic genealogy service? The GG service. Can I say GG, genetic genealogy? Do I have to say it this many times? Can I just say GG? Or does that sound stupid? That might sound stupid, right? The genetic genealogy service by other users to determine ancestry and potential relatives. The genetic genealogy service shares with the user a list of potential relatives and, depending on the specific genetic genealogy service, personally identifying information on those individuals, like their name, email address. Wait, really? You get information like that? Name, email address, and the amount of DNA the user shares with the potential relatives. Oh, interesting. So that's probably why they want to make sure that this information, because I'm assuming when they did the genetic genealogy service thing, it linked that DNA to a bunch of other Kohbergers and, I don't know, mom and dad side of the family, and has their personal name on there, maybe their email addresses and all the information. And they probably don't want that out to, I mean, I know the public, but why not out to the defense? That's what I didn't really understand. The user does not receive any genetic information pertaining to other databases, i.e. users' DNA profiles are not shared with each other. Okay, but you get the name, email address, and all that. Okay. This same process, used frequently by members of the public, can also be used by law enforcement as a part of their investigation, a technique referred to as investigative genetic genealogy, or IGG. Yes, thank you! Once a publicly available genetic genealogy service shows a law enforcement potential relatives of suspect, law enforcement applies traditional investigative. And wait, so that means that like if you ever submit your DNA for these genetic genealogy services, potentially law enforcement can be like, oh, yoink, yoink, yoink. Okay. So once you're in the database, you're in the database. We found out who my mom's dad. Oh, it was a family mystery. Oh, did you guys like say hi to him or anything like that? Or did you just left it alone? Your grandma knew who he was, but would not tell my mom. Oh, and took his name to her grave. My uncle got a 45-year-old daughter when my sister was matched as the cousin to this girl. One night stand in college, 44 years prior. Crazy. Wait, so did your uncle know about that? Jeez. I want to do it, but I'm also looking up online and you're finding a ton. It's a family tree of who you're related to. Read the small print. Yeah, the small print's probably like, hey, by the way, once you submit your DNA, we'll be able to find your potential relatives. But you know what? If law enforcement, they might have access to this. Hi, Corgi. Hi, y'all. Hi, Adam. How are you doing today? Yes, it is controversial whether it should be allowed for law enforcement. I say yes. Fuck it. Okay. Law enforcement applies traditional investigative and genealogical methods to build a family tree in an effort to follow the tree to the suspect or a close relative of the suspect. Family trees can be used to narrow down a potential suspect. I actually had no idea law enforcement was allowed to use this. I'm sorry, I'm like kind of stuck on this. I had no idea law enforcement was allowed to use this. Why would they allow law enforcement to use this? Because wouldn't they, like I get they want to help, but at the same time, it might deter people from wanting to use their services. Anyways, okay. Family tree can be used to narrow down a potential suspect based on factors such as age, gender, opportunity, known physical characteristics of a suspect, etc. In this case, investigators use IGG, investigative genetic genealogy, okay, to begin the process of developing a lead to the individual who left the DNA on the kabar knife sheath. The Idaho State Police utilized a private laboratory to develop a S&P profile from the DNA on the kabar knife sheath. So I think at this point, though, even though they didn't have this DNA on the knife sheath, I think they already had Kohberger as a suspect because I think based on like surveillance footage, they were able to find the white Kia Elantra. They were able to find out that Kohberger drives it. They followed it to like the university that he was at. So I think they already had Kohberger as a suspect, but this kind of just really sealed it for them, I guess. The private laboratory started using genetic genealogy to develop a family tree, but after law enforcement decided the FBI would take over, the private laboratory ceased its efforts and sent the S&P profile to FBI. The FBI uploaded the S&P profile to one or more publicly available genetic genealogy services to identify possible family members of the suspect based on the shared genetic DNA data. The FBI could then view the genetic genealogy services. Oh my God, this word is going to give me a nightmare. Services portal information regarding potential relatives of the suspect who left DNA on the kabar knife sheath. Based on the information the FBI could see the genetic genealogy services portal, the FBI went to work building a family tree of the genetic relatives of the suspect DNA left at the crime scene in an attempt to identify the contributor of the unknown DNA. The FBI built the family tree using the same tools and methods used by the members of the public who wish to learn more about their ancestors. For example, the FBI consulted social media. Ooh, they probably went on Facebook. Facebook would give you a lot of information. Okay, make your profile private, change your names up. Viewed vital records such as birth and death certificates. viewed other information already contained in the user portal for the genetic genealogy service, including unverified information submitted by other users of the genetic genealogy service. The FBI also consulted subscription-based databases available to law enforcement for information on individual people. The product of the genealogy conducted by the FBI was a family tree that contained the name, birth date, and the death date of the suspects of hundreds of relatives, as well as their familial connections between each other and the suspect, Brian Kohberger. The FBI, do you guys remember what his middle name is? Brian C. Kohberger. Do we ever find out what his middle name was? The FBI then sent to local law enforcement a tip to investigate the defendant. The IGG process pointed law enforcement toward defendant, but it did not provide law enforcement with a substantive evidence of guilt. The FBI did not, for example, conduct a direct comparison between the S&P profile from the kabar knife sheath and the defendant's S&P profile. That type of direct comparison required the more traditional STR DNA analysis, which was conducted by the Idaho State Police, not the FBI. Prior to the FBI's IGG efforts, the ISP, Idaho State Police Laboratory, developed the traditional STR DNA. Is it STR DNA? STR DNA profile from the DNA found in the kabar knife sheath. After identification of defendant, law enforcement recovered trash from the home of the defendant's parents, and the ISP laboratory did STR DNA analysis of items from the trash for comparison to the unknown crime scene DNA. That comparison indicated the DNA found on the trash belonged to the biological father of the individual who left the DNA on the kabar knife sheath. Remind me again, does he have any siblings? If I remember correctly, does he have a sister? For some reason, I'm remembering that he has a sister. They confirmed with his DNA, and she looked just like us. We have the same nose, lips. Mom said my uncle met my aunt right after and didn't want to ruin his relationship. Oh, geez. Sisters, plural. I don't know. In case Kohberger has a brother out there, and he'd be like, you know what? It was my brother that did it. I don't know. It wasn't me. Okay. Pursuant to a search warrant, law enforcement then collected DNA from the defendant via buccal swab. A traditional STR DNA comparison was done between the STR profile found on the kabar knife sheath and the defendant's DNA. The comparison showed a statistical match. Specifically, the STR profile is at least 5.37 octillion times more likely to be seen if the defendant is the source than if the unrelated individual randomly selected from the general population is the source. The genealogy conducted by the FBI resulted in a lead that pointed. So again, they can't say that it's 100% sure that it's Kohberger's DNA, but how they have to word it is like this. Oh, it is 5.37 octillion times more likely to be seen if the defendant is a source other than an unrelated individual randomly selected from the general population source. So they can't be like, oh, it's 100% him. So that's how they have to state it. The genealogy conducted by the FBI resulted in a lead that pointed law enforcement to the defendant, but it did not result in the creation of many documents or records. Much of the information relied on by the FBI was only viewed through the user portal in the publicly available genetic genealogy services and other investigative databases. The FBI did not download or create copies of these records. Wait, what? So the genealogy conducted by FBI resulted in a lead that pointed law enforcement to defendant. Wait, but why wouldn't they save this? Wouldn't you want to make sure you have all of your ducks in a row and all your records kept and stuff like that? The FBI did not download or create copies of these records. Why? Once the defendant was in custody, the FBI removed the S&P profile from the genetic genealogy services pursuant to the United States Department of Justice interim policy for forensic genetic genealogy DNA analysis and searching. Holy shit, that was a mouthful. This means the FBI no longer has access to view much of the information it used to create the family tree and cannot view it again without resubmitting the S&P profile to the genetic genealogy services. Wait, what? I'm so confused why, maybe to them it didn't really mean anything, or they just thought it was just like useless information. But I feel like you would want to track everything you do just in case. This means the FBI has no access, so they would have to submit the whole thing all over again and create the family tree all over again. Oh, God. Oh, God. Well, I can see why the state was like, hey, motion for protective order. Please don't make us redo all this all over again. Okay, to the state's knowledge, though, the only record that reflects the FBI's efforts to create the defendant's family tree is the family tree itself. Notes jotted by the FBI agents as they constructed the family tree. Any records created to document the removal of the S&P profile from the genetic genealogy services pursuant to the DOJ policy. Okay. The state has not, nor does the state possess these records or copies of these records. Oh, okay. Argument. The state seeks a protective order for a narrow category of information, namely information related to the use of IgG in this case. Idaho Criminal Rule 16 governs discovery in criminal proceedings. Rule 16 is broad, but it's not a free-for-all. The rule contemplates the exchange of discrete categories of information between the state and the defense. It wasn't me. I hate family secrets. She felt like he owed him. What did I miss? Hi, Kay. How are you doing today? How's it going? Well, you missed this, but I'll be happy to play it again because I thought it was funny. The Umbrella Guy made a video earlier. And it's just, I don't know if they're just trolling Amber Heard or what, but why would they use this as their promotional trailer?
Rex AH. I mean, it has her part of
your lie.
So confused. I don't know.
I'm a fraud.
Okay, but that's what. Okay, anyways, that and then we just got started into the Kohberger stuff. Hi, Rhiannon. How are you doing today? Probably deleted because of the controversy of whether it should be allowed and to protect the privacy of the relatives. Well, isn't that for the court to decide, though? Right? Like, I don't know. I feel like we just have all your information just in case they need it, but I don't know. I know that they had to delete it pursuant to the DOJ policy, but yeah, I don't know. Okay, so we were here. Sorry, now I lost my train of thought. The rule contemplates the exchange of discrete categories of information between the state and defense. As relevant here, the rule contemplates the state will provide 3 discrete categories of information, any material information that would intend to negate the guilt of the accused, any documents or objects that are material to the preparation of the witness defense, intended for use by the prosecutor as evidence at a trial, or were obtained by the defendant or belong to the defendant, and reports of scientific tests or experiments. If the defendant believes he should receive information that does not fall within one of the discrete Rule 16 categories, the rule allows the defendant to seek an order from the court for information where the defendant can use a substantial need for information and the preparation of the case. So I guess they're saying that, okay, well, Kohberger and his team, they need to prove that they need this information. Here, defendants serve. Well, how would they know? Okay, never mind. Here, defendants served in the state a request for discovery that calls for the IgG information. Even though the IgG information falls outside of Rule 16 without first obtaining an order from this court, the state now seeks, and the court should enter, an order protecting the information related to the use of IgG in this case. Specifically, the state seeks to protect the following information. Again, the raw data related to the S&P profile and the underlying laboratory documentations related to the development of the profile, such as the chain of custody forms, laboratory standard operating procedures, analysis notes, etc. All information related to the IgG efforts in creating the family tree and identifying defendants' potential relatives, including the identities of the genetic genealogy services and the personally identifying information of the defendant's records. The state does not seek to protect and has or will disclose the following information. A genetic kit report from the private lab utilized by the Idaho State Police, which documented the DNA test was performed, okay? Information related to the SCR DNA analysis conducted using DNA recovered from the kabar knife sheath and the DNA recovered from the defendant's parents' trash, okay? Information related to the SCR DNA analysis conducted using the DNA recovered from the kabar knife sheath and the DNA recovered from the defendant via buccal swab. Okay, so this is like the information they're like, hey, we'll give it to the Kohbergers, Kohberger and his attorneys, but how we did it, the background story, and how we construct the family tree and stuff, yeah, we want to protect that. We don't want to give that to the defense. The court should grant an order protecting the IgG information in this case because the IgG information does not fit into any of the discrete categories listed in Rule 16 and good cause exists to protect the information, including the need to protect the privacy of defendants' relatives. Okay, that's where I'm a little bit confused because it's his relatives. I get like not wanting us, the public to have information to Kohberger's family tree and relatives because, they might... I don't know. Maybe the press will go after him and ask for interviews and stuff like that. Or just, maybe people on TikTok will come with theories about like, oh, it was Kohberger's aunt and cousins who did it. I don't know. But I guess I'm a little bit confused because they want to protect Kohberger's relatives' identity from Kohberger. That's where I'm a little confused, guys. We don't have Nightbot here. Although maybe I should bring in Nightbot here. I don't know. I have Stream Elements here, but Stream Elements doesn't do any work. Stream Elements just sucks. Hi, Genie. Oh, is that your new username on the case with Genie? Or was it always like that? No, you changed it, didn't you? I feel like you did. Hello. Good night. See ya, BetaBot. See ya later. Rule 16 does not require disclosure of the IgG information because the IgG information is not exculpatory. Again, exculpatory would be like evidence that would show that Kohberger is not guilty. Rule 16A of the Idaho Criminal Rules does not require the disclosure of the IgG information because the IgG information does not tend to negate the guilt or reduce the potential punishment of the defendant. The rule requires the state to disclose any material information in the prosecuting attorney's possession or control that tends to negate the guilt of the accused as the offense charge that would tend to reduce the punishment for the offense. So they're saying that like if the state has something that could potentially be helpful for the defense team, they have to disclose it no matter what. As written, this rule largely mirrors the federal Brady requirement that the state produce to a criminal defendant all material exculpatory information. But Rule 16A and Brady are limited to exculpatory information. They do not require the prosecutor to make a complete and detailed accounting to the defense of all police investigatory work on a case. What are the question of whether IgG information must be disclosed as this exculpatory is one of first impression in Idaho. Courts outside of Idaho have correctly decided that IgG information need not to be disclosed as exculpatory. Citing a case. Let's see. In Green, law enforcement used DNA recovered from the victim's nightgown to identify the defendant as a possible suspect. Then they surreptitiously, secretly, recovered items from the defendant's garbage that contained DNA and found through SCR DNA testing that the DNA in defendant's garbage matched the DNA found in the victim's nightgown. A saliva test then confirmed the defendant's DNA matched the DNA on the victim's nightgown. Defendant moved to compel the disclosure of the IgG information. After an in-camera hearing, the court denied the motion. The evidence that is material to the defendant's guilt or innocence, the testing that followed the IgG investigation, which is directly compared to fresh swab with DNA with the DNA profile from the victim's nightgown. It is only this evidence that the people intend to present at trial. People are not obligated to provide its preliminary search of the genealogy database of possible matches, which is investigatory in nature and is not exculpatory material to the defendant's defense. As the case illustrates, the state is not required to disclose the IgG information under Rule 16A because the IgG information the state seeks to protect is not favorable to the defendant on the issues of guilt or punishment. The information provided to local law enforcement by the FBI was nothing more than a tip, a lead for local law enforcement to follow up on should they choose to. The genealogical tip did provide, I need to drink this, I hate the word genealogical. From the public is more logical. There's probably some, I don't know, some legal stuff behind it that I just don't understand. But yeah, I do understand like not wanting the public to get to it, but not wanting the defense to get their hands on it. I guess I don't understand why not, but there has to be something that I don't understand. The genealogical tip did not prove or substantiate defendant's guilt. Rather, the tip allowed local law enforcement to focus their investigation on defendant and obtain independent material evidence of his guilt, all of which the state has disclosed or will disclose. Specifically, with respect to DNA, the SCR DNA analysis found the defendant's DNA matched the DNA collected from the kabar knife sheath. To the extent the IgG information has any relevance, the fact that it led law enforcement to the defendant means it is inculpatory rather than exculpatory in nature. Thus, Rule 16A does not require the disclosure of IgG information because it is not relevant to and certainly not favorable to the defendant on the issues of guilt or punishment. Interesting. Yeah, so I guess what it's saying is that if it was exculpatory, something that would preclude, possibly preclude Brian Kohberger from committing these crimes, then the state would have to provide it. But the fact that it's not exculpatory and it's actually inculpatory, it shows that he probably did it. That's why we don't have to show the process leading up to it, the family tree and all that stuff. Okay, I'm kind of understanding this a little bit more. B, Rule 16B4 does not require the disclosure of the IgG information because, hi Rain, how are you doing today? Because the IgG information does not satisfy any of the required criteria. The nature of the IgG information is such that its disclosure is not required under Rule 16B4. The rule requires the disclosure of books, papers, documents, photographs, tangible objects, buildings, or places only when they, 1, are material to the preparation of defense, 2, are intended for use by the prosecutor as evidence in trial, and so are they not using this in trial? And 3, were obtained from the defendant or belong to the defendant. The IgG information does not satisfy any of these criteria. First, the IgG information is not material to the preparation of the defense. Defendant is charged with killing 4 people, not being related to a particular person. The mere fact that it is uploading the completed S&P profile to the publicly available genetic genealogy service led law enforcement to relatives of the defendant does not affect the strength of the evidence against him. The strength of the evidence against defendant in terms of DNA evidence depends upon the confirmatory result from the STR DNA analysis. Hi, Moriah. Hi, Wayne. Hello, hello. Analysis between the defendant's DNA profile and the DNA recovered from the keyboard knife sheath. As explained further below, the state intends to introduce the STR DNA analysis at trial and does not intend to enter any evidence pertaining to the development of the S&P profile or the family tree process for inculpatory purposes. The state has disclosed or will disclose information as related to the STR DNA analysis conducted in connection with the case. The immateriality of the IgG information to the preparation of the defense is perhaps best understood by way of analogy. The tip that came from IgG process is no different than other types of technology hits that law enforcement put on the trail of a suspect. I kind of want to read this actually. United States versus Johnson. For example, in Johnson, law enforcement recovered suspect's DNA from the ball cap left at the scene of the bank robbery. Oh no! Law enforcement ran the DNA profile through CODIS. I mean, I guess when you're like robbing a bank, you know, you're kind of like running around and stuff like that. Maybe your cap just like flies off, maybe the wind or something like that. Which resulted in multiple hits, including the defendant. Scientists narrowed down the hits to the defendant, and the law enforcement confirmed it was the defendant's DNA after acquiring a buccal swab from the defendant. Defendant moved from compel the other CODIS hits from the government, but the court denied this motion. The court explained the DNA evidence material to the defense was a direct comparison between the DNA on the hat and the DNA taken directly from the defendant. Oh. So the fact that, so in this bank robbery case, the fact that the DNA of the hat matched the buccal swab of the defendant, they were saying that like, who cares that there are other hits in the system? Your DNA matches the evidence. Interesting. So I guess that's what they're going to say for Kohberger, because they probably did a mouth swab of Kohberger and they're saying, hey, your mouth swab, the DNA from that, it matches the buckle on the knife sheath. So who cares how we constructed the family tree? Who cares how we were to link it to you? It should have wore a box instead of a ball cap. Did you guys see that? Oh, dude. Some guy tried to rob, like, it looked like an iPhone store or something. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to put this box in my head. And he was like robbing them, breaking through the glass, grabbing all the phones and stuff like that. The box just fell off his head because, you know, the box is pretty loose. And I don't think a square really fits on a circle on our spherical head very well. And it just fell off and caught the face on the camera. I see a lot of Sarah Boone. I'm like, let me introduce you to this business lady. I've heard about her. I've heard about her, but I've just, like, when you guys were telling me about her, I just remember that she attacked her lawyer. And I was like, oh, she sounds really interesting. The court explained the DNA evidence was a direct blah, blah, blah. Okay, moreover, the IgG information could not support an argument for the defendant that law enforcement violated his Fourth Amendment rights by entering the DNA collected from the K-bar knife sheath into genetic genealogy service. A defendant cannot prove a violation of Fourth Amendment without first showing he or she had a reasonable expectation of privacy in the place search. The K-bar knife sheath was abandoned at the scene, as was the DNA inside it. Defendant cannot show, man, the K-bar knife sheath is going to be this is going to be a hard one for the defense to explain away. I don't know. How do you guys think Kohberger is going to explain this? I've already had my theories. Maybe Kohberger might be like, oh, I'm friends with the kids at that house. Yeah. Or he might be like, oh, I know someone that knows them and I've been at their house before. I've been at their house, for parties. They have parties there. I've been there before. I don't know. How is he going to explain this? What do you think? She seems sick enough to do all that. If the defense really wanted the genealogy, they could submit their own sample. I'm trying to figure out if I heard that she didn't she? Or maybe not. He's going to stay silent. He's got to explain why the knife sheath is there. I heard he might claim... he left it while buying drugs. I heard about the drug stuff, but as far as I heard, there hasn't been any credulity. Is that the word I'm looking for? Behind that. Tendency to be ready to believe that it's something is real or true. Yeah, like people were saying that like, I don't know, there's something about like drugs, buying drugs. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't really heard too much about that. I've just heard it in passing. My client is forgetful, Your Honor. It's going to be a major uphill battle for the defense. Yeah, the knife bar, the fucking knife sheath thing just really... Anyways, the knife sheath was abandoned at the scene, had DNA inside it. Defendant cannot show that he had a reasonable explanation of privacy and DNA left at the scene of a quadruple homicide or in the genetic information of his relatives who voluntarily provided their own DNA to the genetic genealogy services. The case citing. Second, the state does not rely on the IgG information to establish probable cause for the defendant's arrest, did not present the IgG information to the grand jury, and has no plans to present the IgG information for a protective order is sought as evidence at trial. Yeah, because we didn't hear about this IgG information in the, it wasn't even included in the probable cause affidavit. Instead, the state has relied on and will continue to rely on the STR DNA analysis comparing defendant's DNA to the DNA on the K-bar knife sheet to establish defendant's guilt. Again, the state has disclosed or will disclose information related to the STR DNA analysis and analysis conducted in the connection with this case. Third, the document and tangible objects encompassed in the IgG information were not obtained for the defendant, and defendant has no property interest in them. To the extent the DNA on the K-bar knife sheath once belonged to the defendant, he abandoned that DNA when he left at the crime scene of quadruple homicide. Defendant has never had a property interest in the records that reflect... You know what I wonder? Okay, so dog hair gets everywhere. I wonder if they're able to get some doggy hair. Oh no, actually, the dog is I think their dog was a mix though, right? Like a poodle mix. Oh, they don't really shed a lot, right? I know corgis shed a fuck ton. His lord will come with an excuse then. I feel like he's not going to talk that much. He used a knife for hunting. Well, I mean, like the fact that the knife sheath. Not even the knife. Like the knife is not there. The knife is gone. It's just the knife sheath that's left at the crime scene. Because if he just left the knife there, well, it would just be like the knife and the sheath. It's like, well, who the hell just leaves just the sheath there and then actually just takes the knife out and like, what? I forgot to put the knife back in. I put the knife back into my pocket and I just left. So it's going to be hard to explain that. Defendant never had property interest in the records that reflect the S&P profile developed from the DNA on the K-bar knife sheath. Nor has he ever had a property interest in information gathered from the genetic genealogy services using the S&P profile, such as information provided to the genetic genealogy services by the defendant's relatives. In short, none of the IgG information the state seeks protect came directly from the defendant or currently belongs to the defendant. Rule 16b-5 does not require disclosure of the IgG information because the IgG information is not a result of a scientific test or experiment. Rule 16 also requires the disclosure information related to the scientific experiments. Speaking of scientific experiments and like trial stuff, do you guys remember how they had that one expert? It was the Murdoch trial. The state had that one expert. It wasn't even an expert. It was actually just like a police. I think it was just like law enforcement guy who was explaining how he tested whether or not the screen on Maggie's phone would light up if it was thrown. And then it was being cross-examined by Murdoch's lawyers, and they're like, okay, so what did you do? He's like, I don't know, I just threw the phone around. He just threw the phone around and just recorded his data based off of that. I just thought it was really funny. I didn't think it looked good for the state, but whatever, you know. I remember that. Yeah, dude, that was so funny. He was like, yeah, I was just, sitting in my office. I threw the phone around, and the guy's like, okay, well, how many times did you throw your phone around? Like, was there like, are you an expert in this? Was there like, did you write down the data? He's like, no, just in my head. Duh. I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting. I was a little surprised that the judge allowed that. Yeah, it wasn't even documented or anything. It was weird. Anyways, so yeah, when there are scientific reports or tests and stuff like that, experiments, they must disclose it. The rule does not require the state to disclose what law enforcement does with the results of reports. Moreover, a process, procedure, investigative technique is not a scientific test or experiment merely because it involves the comparison of information or objects or requires the use of logic or reason. There are two types of scientific tests conducted with respect to DNA that fall within the purview of Rule 16b-5. First, law enforcement used the SCR DNA analysis to compare the DNA on the knife bar sheath to the defendant's father, then to the defendant. As required by Rule 16b-5, the state has provided the reports to those scientific tests. Okay. The state has also provided other information related to the SCR DNA analyses because the state plans on using that information at trial. Second, the private laboratory developed the S&P profile from the DNA and the K-barred knife sheath as required by Rule 16b-5. The state will produce the report that documents that DNA test. Rule 16b-5 does not require the state to disclose how the S&P profile was used, and the genealogy the FBI conducted based on the DNA information does not constitute a scientific experiment or test. The FBI submitted defendants' S&P profile to one or more genetic genealogy services and were able to view potential relatives and access unverified data added by users in the genetic genealogy services. Starting with these potential relatives, the FBI engaged in traditional genealogy to put together a family tree that could lead them to a suspect. Putting together the family tree required the FBI to review sources such as social media, publicly available databases, subscription-based databases, vital records, census records, historical newspapers. None of those actions can accurately be described as scientific test or experiment. The product of the FBI efforts was a family tree comprised of hundreds of defendants' relatives. Put simply, the family tree created by the FBI cannot accurately be described as the results of reports or scientific tests or experiments, and thus it falls outside of Rule 16b-5. Good cause exists for the court to enter an order protecting the IgG information, and if necessary, the court should hold an in-camera hearing. The fact that IgG information does not fall within Rule 16 is reason enough for this court to enter an order protecting the IgG information. But the state is not seeking. I'm still a little confused. Like, I get what they're saying that, this is just all like information, all like the background behind the scenes stuff leading up to them getting the DNA and then tying Kohberger's dad and all that stuff. But but why wouldn't they want the defense to have access to this information? I'm confused why we're writing a 33-page motion for protective order. Like I said, if it was protecting, Kohberger's family's identity from the public, yeah, sure, why not? But from his own family member, Kohberger, are they afraid that Kohberger's gonna be like, you know what? It was this family member that did it. See, I see the genetic genealogy. It's linked to this, and this, and it's possibly it could be this cousin over here. That's what I'm a little confused about. Yeah, they haven't found the actual knife yet. That's why I'm saying it's going to be really weird for Kohberger to explain that away, or his defense team, because who leaves just a sheath behind? Unless the knife is laying around somewhere. But it's like, hey, I'm going to take the knife off and I'm going to transport it back in my pocket. I don't know. The disclosure of the IgG information risks harm not only... Okay, so this is... Okay, I want to know why. They want to protect hundreds of innocent civilians from having their personal information, including their names, birth dates, and familial connect. Unless maybe there's a family member that, I don't know, maybe there's some inner family drama and they don't want Kohberger to find out about his cousin. I don't know. I'm just making shit up. I have no idea. I have no idea why they wouldn't want the defense to have this. Okay. Including their names, birthdays, and familial connections to the defendant in a high-profile quadruple homicide from being disclosed. Disclosure of the IgG information risks harm not only to those indirect informants, but also to the genetic genealogy services used by the FBI and the IgG investigative technique. This court should follow the procedure laid out by Idaho's appellate courts to determine whether the IgG information must be disclosed. What if he convinced his cousin to kill people with him? But I think that they were able to determine that it was a very high chance that Kohberger's dad's DNA is the fatherly DNA, is that a word? Paternal DNA, meaning that if they were to do a comparison to a cousin or something, I'm sure the numbers would drop significantly. If they say he left it during a party or something, he would have to accept that it's his knife. They can ask him to present the knife then. Where's the knife, right? I mean, because once you start coming up with really weird excuses, it's possible that you could have just left the knife at the party and then someone stole it. It's possible, but the fact that you have to take all these it has to be in context, right? Okay, knife sheath, found at the crime scene. Like once you take into like contextually, then the story just wouldn't really make sense to the jury. So I don't know. I think sometimes people think they're like, oh, I can introduce reasonable doubt by saying they're like, oh, it's also possible that, the knife was stolen. Oh, it's also possible that, like I did have the knife and I lost it. Oh, but no, with the jury, they're not that stupid, right? They're going to take all the information and it's going to be in context. And from that, you could still get royally screwed. Hi, B. Hi, Noel. How's it going? How are you doing today? Hello, hello. The process used to collect IGD information. 1, providing the IGD information will require the disclosure of the identity of informants and prejudice the state. I don't get it, but they'll tell us why. The process used to collect information, gathering information from the several informants, including the services to which the S&P profile was submitted indirectly, from the relatives of the defendant who hit on the S&P profile. The state has no intent of presenting the IG information for which a protective order is sought as evidence at trial, which means none of the IG's informants were produced as witnesses at trial. Disclosure information is consistent with the state's privilege to refuse I still don't get it. I don't understand. Are we going to get there? As a general matter, protect the identity of the informants. So I guess the informants are the relatives that were okay with giving their DNA to help the case? Are they afraid that Kohberger is going to get mad at the relatives? This court should follow the process laid out by Idaho's appellate's court to determine whether the IG information must be disclosed. Conclusion. Based on the above, the state respectfully prays for the court to enter an order protecting the IG information from disclosure as it falls outside the purview of Rule 16. In the alternative, if the defense can establish IG information is in fact relevant, the state asks this court to conduct a requisite in-camera hearing for the state to present information related to the IG information and then enter a protective order under ICR. The IG information is not subject to discovery and needs not to be disclosed by the state. What else do we have here? Oh, is this replying to this motion? Or is this something else? This is in 2020. What is this? Oh, this is the appellate. Okay. Hold on. I skipped these 2 pages because I was like, do I need to read that? I should follow the appellate courts. Okay. I don't know. I'm still kind of confused. But anyways, that's where we're at. Maybe there'll be some... I'll wait for maybe Court TV and Long Crime. Maybe they'll explain it further or something like that. And I'll let you guys know. Oh, is it summer solstice? I didn't know what summer solstice was until my apartment. They celebrated it. It's like the day that has the most daylight, right? Before it starts going back down again. And then sooner or later, it's going to start getting dark at 5 p.m. and all that.